Hello, I'm Andri, and today we're continuing with our essential philosophical reading series by Immanuel Kant and his critique of pure reason. First, we shall introduce the author himself. Immanuel Kant was born in 1724 in Königsberg in Prussia, where he spent his entire life. As a boy, he attended the Collegium Fridericanum, a school run by the Pietists, the Lutheran sect to which his family belonged to. In 1740, he enrolled in the University of Königsberg, where he studied a wide variety of subjects, including theology, philosophy, mathematics, physics, and medicine. He withdrew from the university in 1747 to support himself by working as a private tutor for various families in eastern Prussia. Later on, he resumed his studies in 1754 and completed his degree the following year. He then became a lecturer at the University of Königsberg, teaching such diverse subjects as mathematics, geography, mineralogy, and philosophy. 15 years later, he was appointed professor of logic and metaphysics. His writings, especially his monumental critique of pure reason, brought him increasing fame, and students came from afar to hear him lecture. In 1797, he stopped lecturing, but he continued to write. He died in Königsberg in 1804 at the age of 79. Kant's principal works, in addition to Critique of Pure Reason, are Prolegomena to any future metaphysics, Groundwork of the Metaphysics of Morals, Critique of Practical Reason, and Critique of Judgment. Our reading today is taken from Kant's second edition of Critique of Pure Reason, published in 1787. Kant's project in this book is to investigate how much we can know by pure reason, reason itself, apart from any experience. In his preface, Kant observes that we typically assume that our knowledge or our cognition must conform to objects, that when we know something, our mind must match the way the objects are. If this assumption is correct, it would be impossible to have any knowledge of objects a priori prior to our experience of them. So Kant rejects this assumption, and he holds the converse, that objects must conform to our knowledge, that when we know something, objects must match the way our minds are. Objects conform to our way of receiving sense experience, so-called intuition, and to our way of intellectually synthesizing this sense experience or thought. That is to say, our minds are constructed in such a way that we necessarily sense objects through the forms of sensibility, namely space and time, and we necessarily think objects through certain categories, also called concepts of the understanding, such as causality and unity. This means that we can know certain things about objects a priori. Ad exemplum, we know that we will experience them as existing in space and time and as being caused. But according to Kant, even though we know that objects will invariably appear to us in certain ways, we can never know how things are in themselves. In his introduction, Kant explains that a priori knowledge is characterized by necessity and universality. He then explains that some of our judgments, those in mathematics and metaphysics, for example, are not only a priori, but synthetic. A synthetic proposition adds something to a concept. An analytic one does not. Kant's doctrine about the structure of the mind is primarily designed to explain how much synthetic a priori judgments are possible at all. In the final two sections of our reading, Kant gives arguments to show that space and time, these forms of sensibility, are a priori, and explains that there are 12 categories of the understanding corresponding to the 12 kinds of judgment.